All right there, everyone. The former head of UKIP, Nigel Farage, has announced that he will be forming a new political party to fight for Brexit, what he's calling the biggest battle of his life. That's what we'll be talking about on today's video. If this is your first time here, a very warm welcome to. I post 2 videos a day analyzing current events in light of awesome conservative trends. So let me encourage you to smack that bell and subscribe button. We are on our way. We are in the countdown to 100,000 subscribers, and it'll be an absolute privilege to have you as one of them. All right, so the media is all abuzz about the former head of UKIP, Nigel Farage's announcement that he is in fact forming a new political party to fight what he calls the biggest battle yet if Theresa May fails to pull Britain out of the EU by March. Now, I'm sure many of you are aware that Prime Minister May has in fact postponed the final vote on her disastrous Brexit deal that would have left all of Northern Ireland basically under the EU, and by default or by extension the whole of Britain would end up being subservient to the bullies in Brussels. It was without question a clear admission by the Prime Minister that her Brexit deal was doomed to fail in the House of Commons. As I understand it, the latest roll call showed that she would be defeated by up to 100 of her own members of Parliament, which of course would have been a complete and total humiliation on her part. So the vote could take place as early as next week, or it could be delayed into the new year, perhaps sometime in January. As I understand it, the ultimate deadline for the vote is January 21st. But Nigel Farage is taking no chances. He's announced that he is, in fact, in the process of putting together a new political party that would contest next year's European Parliament elections in May if the UK has failed to pull out of the EU. He said he believed that there was about a 45% chance that Britain would still be in the EU beyond March, which would mean that Britain would, in fact, take part in the European parliamentary elections in May. Now, of course, Farage was the face of UKIP, the United Kingdom Independence Party, for a number of years. He resigned as the party's leader shortly after Brexit won, seeing his dreams of a free and sovereign Britain at least apparently realized. But then he actually announced that he had quit UKIP just a few days back, largely because of Tommy Robinson, or at least that was the stated reason. Gerard Batten, who's the current leader of UKIP, invited Tommy to become an advisor for UKIP. And Farage sees Tommy as part of sort of this radical anti-Islamic wing of British society that he thinks is going to be a disaster for UKIP. We'll get more into that in a second. So for good or for ill, he moved on. He's forming his new party, which now doesn't have a name, and we'll learn more of it in the coming days. Now, there's a couple of things here that I think is important for us to understand in the midst of all this in terms of our analysis. Let's start with the charges of the anti-Islamic and racist forces that Tommy Robinson supposedly represents. And hear me out on this, okay? I get where Farage is coming from. I understand it, okay? You have to remember that many nationalist populist parties in Europe have had to go through a process that Marine Le Pen of France's National Rally calls de-diabolization. Of course, you'd have to be French for that word, right? How's that for $1 million word? De-diabolization. It's also known as de-demonization or detoxification, right? De-diabolization or de-demonization involves basically an intentional normalization process taken by nationalist populist parties in Europe that seeks to bring the party out of the political periphery, out of the fringe, as it were, and into the mainstream. And so, first and foremost, this involves thinking through the kind of rhetoric used in communicating its platforms and policies in ways that reflects consensus-based conversation. So, for example, radical Islam is opposed not because it's a barbaric religion or anything like that, but rather because it's considered incompatible with democratic values. So, for example, Islam is completely incompatible with women's rights and gay rights. So we, the nationalist right, are the ones who are truly standing up for democratic values, for women's rights and for gay rights, by protecting them from ideologies that are harmful to their interests and quite literally, or at least potentially, to their persons. Or we want to close our borders not because we're xenophobic, but because we are true believers of multiculturalism. We love our culture. We love other cultures. But we don't see any way in which these cultures remain actually integral and prosperous if they're forcibly mixed together. We, the nationalist right, are the true multiculturalists. Or we're going to cut immigrants off from social services, not because they don't belong here, because we're heartless, but because of our commitment to social responsibility. Social services are paid for by citizens for the purpose of aiding and assisting our fellow citizens. To make it a free-for-all for anyone who happens to cross the border is to risk the sustainability of such social responsibility. You see, you get the point, right? By appealing to democratic values, multiculturalism, social responsibility, the nationalist right's able to overcome the stigma of being bigoted and xenophobic and racist and anti-Semitic, right? That's de-diabolization. In terms of Geert Wilders, the Dutch Freedom Party, he's made support for Israel and the Jewish people as over and against its Islamic dictator neighbors central to the Dutch Freedom Party's political platform and international policies, right? So I think this is what Farage is sensitive to. He's worried that Tommy Robinson is inconsistent with this de-diabolization process for UKIP, okay? Now, I happen to vehemently disagree with Farage on this. I think Tommy is in many respects the face of the young up-and-coming populist movement that will be the future of UKIP. These studies that have been coming out in the last few years all show that the British population is very concerned about immigration, the rise of Islam in their nation. For example, as of the spring of 2018, 41% of 18 to 24-year-olds and 58% of 25 to 49-year-olds believed that immigration was too high in Britain. That resonates quite well with Tommy Robinson's concerns. In fact, an average of only 25% of Brits think that immigration is good for Britain. The vast majority see immigration as inordinately contributing to rises in crime, a drain on the welfare system, not to mention increasing the threat of terrorism. And more specifically, nearly two-thirds of Brexit voters saw Islam as a danger to the West. So I don't think Tommy is as radical as Farage has pegged him to be. The second thing to note here is that Farage is exemplifying one of the key characteristics of the new Europe that's emerging with the rise of nationalist populism. And that's what scholars are calling de-alignment. De-alignment involves the breakdown of the traditional bonds that used to exist between traditional political parties and their constituents. And this breakdown in the bonds that voters have had with traditional parties, this breakdown is making it easier for new political challengers to rise up and take the nation in a new direction. So, for example, in the past 17 years, the actual number of nationalist and populist parties across the European continent has nearly doubled, growing from 33 to 63. And Farage knows this. And so what he's doing here is taking advantage of this de-alignment trend to create a new party dedicated to realize a renewed sense of British national populism. Again, we have to remember that a growing number of Brits believe that no political party represents their interests. The gap between the populace and the political elite has grown so wide that more and more people have just, well, in many respects, they're just given up. That's why scholars found that over 2 million people who voted in the Brexit referendum did not vote in the last national election before it. They just thought there was no choice that represented their concerns. So clearly the opportunity is there for a new party to sweep in and offer voters a new direction. I think that's what Farage is looking into. So we'll obviously be keeping our eyes on how things develop here, but I think Farage is right. The time may in fact be ripe for a fresh political party to rise up and take Britain into an independent and sovereign future. As always, please like, comment, and subscribe. Check out our new online merchandise selection where you can get gear and apparel celebrating all things nationalist and populist, and get a special Christmas time discount of 15% off all items by entering the promotion code that I've included for you below. And of course, we would love it if you click on our Patreon or PayPal links below, become a supporter of this channel. As you know, we are periodically demonetized by YouTube, and we can really use your help so we can continue to analyze current events in light of awesome conservative trends so that you can personally and professionally flourish. God bless.